Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Denise Mananis. I am the Senior Director of External Affairs for St. John's Riverside Hospital, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's presentation of Omicron flu, an update and safety tips for you. Before we begin, I would like to thank my team, Jason Latour, Nancy Anabi, and Candace Cousins-Hopkins, for the work that they do to get everything lined up to run these programs for our community. So I appreciate you all, and I thank you very much. Okay, so I also would like to talk about our partners in this, and we always appreciate the help in getting the word out to the community about these programs. So the first one that I would like to acknowledge is Sally Pinto, who is from the Yonkers Neighborhood Naturally Occurring Retirement Community. That is under the umbrella of the Yonkers Office for the Aging and Westchester Jewish Community Services. So thank you, Sally, for your help and support. And Z Baird, who is from the Yonkers Public Library. There are 3 locations for the library. That is at the Riverfront, the Will Library, and the Crestwood Library. And so we appreciate you getting the word out about these programs to all the people who go to the library in Yonkers. So without further ado, I would like to take a moment and introduce our 2 speakers today. Dr. Rajendra Rampersad is currently the Chief of Medicine and Intensive Care at St. John's Riverside Hospital. He is triple board certified in critical care medicine, pulmonary disease, and sleep medicine. In addition, Dr. Rampersad also leads the Sleep Center at St. John's Riverside Hospital. During the height of the COVID-19 surge, Dr. Rampersad was identified as the pharmaceutical lead for the hospital, and his efforts to make advancements since COVID include driving St. John's participation in the Mayo Clinic's largest plasma program, the largest of its kind in the United States. After attending medical school, Dr. Rampersad did his residency and fellowship at St. Vincent Medical Center in New York City. Our other speaker today is Maureen Clark. Maureen Clark joined the St. John's community as a staff nurse in 2008. She is currently one of the nurse educators here at St. John's. She is board certified nursing professional development specialist. She holds certification as a critical care nurse for at least the last 10 years. Maureen helps train all the newly hired nursing staff in our facilities and is one of our American Heart Association trained instructors for all levels of CPR courses. And just as a personal aside, I would just like to say that you can't find 2 better practitioners, clinicians anywhere than Dr. Rampersad and Maureen Clark. So we're very thrilled to have both of you with us today. And so I would like to start with Dr. Rampersad, if that's okay. So we're going to get right into it, Doctor. How are you today? You good?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. So Omicron has been in the news for at least the last 2-3 months, nonstop. Can you tell us what is currently happening with Omicron right now in our area?
Sure. So one of the things that is important to stress is that the numbers of infections are definitely coming down. So we've definitely been beyond our peak. So the numbers, especially in Westchester County, if you look at a little graph, as of the 1st of January till now, toward the end of the first week of February, the numbers are significantly less. So that includes hospital admissions, it includes people testing positive. It also includes people who are seeking outpatient services. Now, one of the important things to remember is that even though our numbers in the hospitals are coming down, people may have lingering symptoms. And this is not true just for Yonkers in New York, but it's true for a lot of the places that have had a COVID surge, because people, who have infections that may not require medical attention may develop some lingering symptoms that they're now seeking from their private doctors. We're getting some patients coming through the ER who are 3-4 weeks after their infection. So the great news is our numbers are definitely getting better. The great news is that the hospitalizations are getting better. Another great news, which is I think the best, is that the deaths are getting better. Unfortunately, there has been a significant number of deaths due to the Omicron, and those numbers we can't tally until all the surge is done and we sort of look back and analyze the information.
Okay, so there's been a lot of press about how contagious this variant is versus the previous variants, like the Delta variant. Can you talk a little bit about the contagiousness? Because I do think that plays a role in our discussion a little bit later with the mask wearing.
Sure. And, one of the difficult things with this, and I think, it drives a little bit of confusion. And I think when most of us get confused, we become very wary of things. And it's not until we get to really look at all the information, not just here in Yonkers, in New York, in the United States, but all over the world. One thing that we do know is that the Omicron is certainly more contagious than the first couple of the COVID viruses. Now, remember, COVID was first identified in right at the end of 2019. And since then, there's actually been multiple variants. And this is what happens. So the nature of a virus is to multiply and to change. And once that happens, there's going to be multiple variants, just like influenza and how we get a yearly influenza shot. So I don't want people to be afraid or to be concerned that they're seeing, well, there's a variant in Europe, there's a variant in China, there's a variant in, Australia, there's a variant in California. We will be seeing those things. Now, the natural history of a lot of viruses is that as they become more infectious, hopefully their virulence goes down. And so this is what we're hoping with the Omicron. So it's certainly more infectious than the Delta. It's certainly more infectious than the Alpha that was there. And there's a whole bunch of them. There was a Gamma, there was a Beta, there was Iota that, really didn't get a lot of press because there wasn't large numbers. Now, early on with the COVID pandemic, people said that, in order to catch something, we probably need to be within 6 feet of each other and probably at least 15 minutes. With the Omicron, that's sort of out the window. So we know that the distance is probably a little bit less. I mean, some people dare to make an assumption, but, it is less than 6 feet. And the time is also less. So one of the things and why the CDC had recommended upgrading the masks, which Maureen will talk about a little bit later, is because even with a surgical mask, and if somebody is within very close distance of Omicron infected patient, they can catch it within 15 minutes. So it's still very important to hand hygiene, very important to mask, and we all sort of make little fun about it, but wearing the mask under your nostril or down under your chin, that's definitely not effective. And, again, Maureen will talk a little bit more about that. But yes, it's certainly more infected. And, what they estimated, again, these are sort of early numbers, is that for every person who had the first generation of the COVID-19 and then Delta, maybe for every one person that had an infection, 2 or 3 maybe got infected. With the Omicron, it could be as many as 6 or 7, maybe even more. So it sort of depends. There is another Omicron variant, the B2, that's sort of floating around now, and that's supposedly a little bit more infectious. But again, the numbers are very hard because, as you can imagine, they have to populate the numbers, they have to analyze the numbers, and then put it out in a way not to cause concern with the public, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So that brings me to another topic, which is sort of on everyone's mind as we're in the middle of winter here. And normally we would be looking at a flu season. Is it possible to get, are we having a strong flu season? Are people presenting with Omicron and flu? Can you unfortunately do both of those?
Yes, and one of the things, again, good news is that we did have a spike, toward the end of the year. So the middle of December, there was a spike in the region of influenza. And, flu is a very, very sort of ubiquitous infection. I mean, every year, we get flu vaccine, flu goes across the world. Almost 500,000 people die of flu every year around the world. So it's this sort of subtle thing that people say, oh, I had the flu and I just, was out for a couple of days. But flu can be dangerous in certain populations. It was always ironic to me because maybe about a month and a half ago, there was all these reports of we have a patient with COVID plus influenza. So we actually had a patient in her 90s a year ago who had COVID and influenza, and she actually did fine and got discharged out of the hospital. We had a patient who had COVID and pneumococcal pneumonia, which is a very common bacterial pneumonia. We had a patient who had COVID and Legionella pneumonia, which is unfortunately can be common in certain times of the years and seasons. And obviously, the more infections you have, the higher your chance of becoming more ill. But these patients with the co-infections, most of them actually did quite well. And I think a big part of that is that the patients who had these co-infections, they were vaccinated for influenza, they were vaccinated with the pneumococcal vaccine for pneumococcal pneumonia. I think that was a big reason why
That they
they
did
actually did
better.
okay. Yep,
Wow.
definitely. But the
All
answer
right.
is
So
you
so
can have
there's something to
effect.
those shots.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So the other thing that people are talking about like crazy is the idea that you can get COVID more than once. I know a lot of even people who have received the vaccine, but I want to sort of liken that to people who get the flu shot. You get the flu shot and sometimes you get the flu, but you don't get a very, terrible case of the flu. But can you get it more than one time?
Sure. And, I think one of the things that, and there is a lot of confusing information out there. One of the things about vaccines is that, for this specific type of vaccine, for this specific type of illness, it really avoids serious illness and critical illness and death. And, we had a young patient who came into the hospital. She was, in her early 30s, chronic asthmatic, a lot of other medical history, and it's pretty shame for a young person. And she was vaccinated and boosted. And when I saw her, she says, well, how good was the vaccine for me? I says, actually, you know what? You're going to come in and spend just a few days with us, and you're going to go back to your life, and you're going to be fine, with your other medical issues because you've been vaccinated and boosted. And I think that there's been a lot of confusion, even in the healthcare community, that if you get a vaccine, you will not get either an infection with it or sort of get a very asymptomatic or mild infection, and you can
Right.
pass it on to other people.
So
So I
people
think
sort of
that
equate the word vaccine to prevention rather than mitigation of severity.
exactly, and I think that's a great way to think about it. And again, if you look at the numbers, and it's really amazing. Every time I sort of think about this, and I have a son in high school, and so they actually pool test them twice a week. So on the way to school on Mondays and Tuesdays, this guy is swabbing himself, and all the kids know the routine already. And we were talking about the vaccine because some of his friends know that I'm a doctor, and I was telling him that they've dispensed over 10 billion doses of vaccines for COVID. 10 billion doses of vaccine. And this gives me, and I think gives him and his little friends, some comfort level, because even though there's a lot of things that we see about side effects and about bad things about it, when you think about the number of doses that have been dispensed, and unfortunately, if it's myself or my family or my relative, my friend who actually gets a side effect of the vaccine, it ends up being a very terrible thing.
Right.
But I have actually lost multiple people in my family prior to the vaccinations. Even my brother-in-law, who was a doctor down in Florida, he was in his 40s. My mom's brother, my dad's brother. So they didn't have the opportunity to take the vaccine. If you have if you're vaccinated and you're boosted, your chance of getting critically ill and passing is almost 100 times less than somebody who's unvaccinated.
Okay.
And we definitely see it. And so, here, at St. John's, where we have the most critically ill patients in the city of Yonkers. And I can tell you, we have not had one single patient who was vaccinated and boosted who ended up in the intensive care unit or on a ventilator. And so it's very unfortunate because the disease has really become a disease of the unvaccinated population. Now,
Right.
one of the things that we do know is most medications, there's a sweet spot. So people who are advanced age, whatever age you want to say that to be, and at a young age, they may fall out of this really middle ground where they get the maximal benefit of these things. So if people are a little bit older, it may not be as effective. If you're a little bit younger, the same is true, but you can certainly get the infection again, because just like influenza, the virus changes, and this is what they do. This is their nature. So
Right.
just say that you had one particular infection with the Delta, your body would make its own innate antibodies, but the antibodies cannot account for all the variations in the mutations.
Got
And
it.
so you can certainly get the Omicron infection, you can get whatever else is out there. Now, the hope is that if you're having an innate infection and build your own antibodies, and if you've had a vaccine, your illness, again, should be mild to asymptomatic. And that is what we're seeing. And again, we're still collecting information, but remember, the rest of the world has had a head start on this. So, it's really important to look and see, well, what's happened in Asia, what's happened in Europe, what's happened in Australia, what's happened in South America. And the
So
general trend is
So
the
that actually
vaccinations.
speaks to one of the questions that I had, which is that are you looking at the trends globally? What's coming?
Yeah, so it's funny because again, the first person that told me about COVID was actually my son. So I remember this like it was yesterday. It was like right after the holidays, January of 2020. And my son, because he's a man of international man of mystery, this guy, and he's like, Dada, did you see what's going on over in Asia? And I says, no. And he showed me this thing about the coronavirus. And so I started looking at it, and then one night our CEO of our hospital shoots me a text and says, "Hey, did you see what's going on? Do you think we need to do something about this for our community?" And that shows you the concern we have, right, in our institution.
Absolutely.
And I say, yeah, we probably need to prepare for this, and that's how I ended up with almost 100 ventilators in here, to meet the needs of the community. And so I
Very
do look at
interesting.
that, so a big part of what I do is even for respiratory and critical care medicine. I mean, other places tend to be a little bit more savvy with things. So as much as I can look at, and we have a great team here. So we have, my partners, we have our infection disease doctors, we have all the other practitioners who sort of like do their homework and say, hey, did you see this or did you see that? We have a little email thread or
So
text.
you're still monitoring what's happening where and
Yeah.
watching.
Yep. Yep.
So, okay, that's good. I have a couple of questions that are a little bit more sort of grounded for our audience. There was a question that was posed about how long immunity lasts, both from having gotten antibodies from having COVID, but also how long your immunity lasts with the vaccine. Can you speak to that?
Sure. And this is an interesting thing because um, if you look at information for this, there's not a lot of guidance because, to be honest, we don't know what the exact story is. And so what we do know is that there are people who may have had a COVID infection who did not build innate antibodies. And we don't know why this is. So I actually personally know about 8 people who are between the ages of 20 to 50 who had COVID who didn't build antibodies, but they built antibodies to the vaccine.
Oh,
And it's really interesting. And this is again things that we'll have to investigate. If you look at the temporal relationship to boosting, so before it was 6 months and now they reduced it to 5. So we sort of feel that between 3 months to 6 months is the time where things may wane down. And I think a big part of this is also that the other variants are out there. And so again, if we had a COVID, infection number 1, it may not cover if we get the 3rd or 4th COVID virus because of this mutation on the spike protein. So it does wane. Now, some people, it will last longer. Some people it lasts shorter. So the question becomes, well, how do we monitor this? The CDC actually says do not use your antibody levels as a good marker for immunity. And I know a lot of doctors, and myself included, because we're just curious because we're around COVID patients all day. So I actually checked myself after I got the vaccine, after I got boosted, and after I got actually my second and my boost dose. And even a high number doesn't mean I can't get it, but it means that I have something to help protect myself.
okay.
So this is why it's really important for boosting. And, again, what we're noticing in our community, what we're noticing in New York, what we're noticing around the world, is that the people who are getting sicker in the hospitals or having more morbidity are those who are unvaccinated and also those who are unboosted. So if you're
So
not boosted, it's very important.
So the idea of the boost is basically going to be, maybe we're going into that place where every year we may have to get a boosted shot to just keep, like a flu shot.
Sure. And,
Oh,
there's talks of having a combined vaccine. And again, the CDC, has recommended that if you had the Pfizer or the Moderna, that your boost should be at 5 months and not 6. And if you've gotten the J&J vaccine, that your boost should be after 2 months.
okay.
And it's actually very important because, again, we don't have a solid, hard, fast way to say, okay, I'm okay, you're not okay, Maureen's not okay. So it's really important to sort of follow these guidelines. And again, guidelines don't capture all of us, but when you think about, the grand scheme of things, it will protect most of us if we follow the rules.
Okay. So before we get over to Maureen, what I wanted to talk about was monoclonal antibodies. So let's say you are an unvaccinated or you only had one dose, maybe that immunity is kind of run out a little bit. The monoclonal antibodies, I understand, have changed over time. Are they effective? Do we have them? You want to just give us a little something about those?
Sure. So the monoclonal really got thrown into the limelight because of the president. And when he got his COVID infection, even though he wasn't a strong proponent of the vaccines, he actually received the monoclonal. And the monoclonal he received, the company is right here in Terrytown. So there was basically two companies, Regeneron and Eli Lilly. So they made these monoclonals, and basically what they are is that when we have an infection, our body will build our own antibodies with our own machinery in our bodies. When you get a vaccine, the vaccines give our body like a little recipe, and it actually makes antibodies against the spike protein, and that's how it gets that name, corona, because it's a little crown.
Right.
The monoclonal antibody is basically synthetic. So it's a synthetic antibody. And what they basically do is that it helps you to recover from the symptoms. And I think it was one of the more effective tools that we had, because most of the patients, if you came in the right amount of time, it really subdued their symptoms, it shortened the illness. Now remember, when you're dealing with these type of infections, our goal is to, number one, reduce your symptoms, which the monoclonal does, but also to reduce the viral load in you, which is to make the virus not multiply. And so that's where the remdesivir came in. So the remdesivir is a medication that you receive in the hospital, but it basically tells the virus, okay, we want you to stop multiplying this patient's body. The monoclonal, what it did was it gave you enough antibodies to sort of fight the viruses to reduce symptoms.
Okay.
And what they've noticed with the Omicron, unfortunately, is that our first two generation of the monoclonal antibodies was not very effective, right? So when you really look at the information, it's not that they were 100% ineffective, it's just that they were significantly reduced. So when you think about the whole process of making the monoclonal, dispensing the monoclonal, sending it to the hospitals, giving it to the patients, monitoring it, it didn't seem like it was worthwhile for them to continue doing this. And so they actually stopped dispensing the monoclonals, these two specific ones. Now, the good thing is GSK has their own monoclonal antibody, and that one actually turned out to be effective against Omicron.
Okay.
And I can tell you,
we've that here.
Yes, we do. So we actually have all three of them. Now, one of the things that's, that's always, I'm always looking out for is that if a patient comes in with a COVID infection, we unfortunately cannot tell what species it is. And I remember during the first COVID wave, we had a patient that came in that looked exactly like she had a COVID infection, and we kept testing her and testing her. And what this patient actually had was the swine flu from 2009. Oh. So you have to remember, these things are sort of out there, right? Yeah. And so this is why we check for flu. When you come into the hospital, we check you for influenza A and B. We'll check you for RSV, and we'll check you for COVID, because the symptoms are very similar. Right. So with these type of things is that, you have to keep looking, because COVID has sort of taken the stage, right? Everybody's now COVID, but there are other things out there that we continue to look at. So we actually still have some supply of the Regeneron and the Eli Lilly. We have supply definitely of the GSK. And it's a call, because some people will say, well, if you look at reports, that maybe 5% of the patients come in with Delta still, and we just don't know these things. Right. So whatever the case may be, if you're here, we can work you up, assess if you're positive for COVID in some fashion, and we can offer the outpatient. Now, the great thing with this is that you come in, we have an infusion center right off the ER, so the ER docs did a great job. They sort of like sectioned off an area. You won't come in, so the general population doesn't have to worry that they're going to be admixed with a COVID patient. You go into an area that's secure. The patients will be there, they get worked up, they get their infusion, and they're on their way home. So the patients who get the monoclonal, there's no need for admission to the hospital. So I know a lot of times, when patients are being told or considering, I want to go get assessed, they're like, I don't know if I want to get admitted to the hospital. The great thing with this is that you'll come, you'll get assessed, you'll get your treatment, and if you're a candidate for the monoclonal, you'll receive it and you'll be actually sent home. That's so wonderful. It's actually a good process.
So, Doctor, thank you so much. We're going to move on to our friend Maureen Clark, who's been here waiting to give us all of her words of wisdom.
Sure.
So, Maureen, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. So let's jump right in because masks, making everybody crazy. So the first question, and there seems to be great confusion about who is protected when you wear a mask. Is it the wearer of the mask? Is it the people in front of you? What's the real deal?
The real deal is actually both. Both the person wearing it and the people that you are around are protected by the mask. Because the mask, what the mask is there to do is to help block the particles that are kind of in the air that we breathe out, right? And so either the person wearing the mask breathing out or the person that you're communicating with breathing in and out as well.
Very good. So can you talk a little bit about the differences between the different masks? I know a lot of people are wearing cloth masks because they're fashion statements. I know that general people in the hospital are wearing surgical masks, and I know that a lot of clinicians are wearing N95s or KN95s. Most people have no idea what the differences are. Can you speak to those?
Sure, definitely. So the biggest thing with a mask, though, is that you need to make sure that the mask fits properly. Like as Dr. Ramprasad was saying earlier, you need to make sure that it's fitting over your nose. It's a nice snug fit, because if it's not, no matter which type of mask you're wearing, it's not going to be beneficial for you or the people that you are around. The mask also should really be comfortable for you to wear as well. And then after that, we assess the risk, kind of gets put into the place around there. So if you're going to be in areas of, around sick patients or people who are immune compromised, the higher level of filtration of mask is better. So if you are going to go with a cloth mask, you should definitely choose a cloth mask that's at least 2 layers. If not, if you could get a 3rd layer, that would be even the best out of the cloth options. So I have a couple here just to kind of show. With a cloth mask, you want it to be 2 layers. If you can get one that has a nose bridge in it so that when you put it on, you can really kind of secure it tight around. And if it has adjustable ear pieces as well, so you can really kind of close the gaps around your cheeks and around your chin as well. So they, as you said, they are very fashionable these days and come in all different. So you could have them with the little kind of clips on the end, or there's even ones that you just kind of will adjust, kind of pulling up and down for that. Some cloth masks, so definitely most of the time they're 2 layer, but if you can find a 3rd layer, that is even the better one. The surgical or procedure masks, as you said, in the hospital settings, we are wearing this. Also acceptable for out in the community or schools as well. But with these as well, you really, they are made as kind of one size fits all, but they're not really a one size fits all, right? Everyone's face structure is a little bit different. So again, you want to make sure you can make adjustments to it to really fit that well. So in these surgical or procedure masks, there is a nose bridge on here that you can kind of tighten around to make sure that you can put it in nice and tight and then around the ears. At the end of the presentation, we are going to show you a little video that the CDC put together of how to even make adjustments to these to help fit around your face if these are a little bit too loosely fitting. It's called the knot and tuck method to help kind of adapt the surgical procedure mask to a better fit around the face. Lastly would be the N95s, and I have 2 different ones because there are different makes and models that are out there, and different ones do fit everyone differently. With these, an N95, and how you could tell the difference between an N95 and the KN95 is with the N95, they only have straps that go over the base, the back of the head and to the back of the neck, where the KN95 have the ones that are the loop around the ears.
Okay.
The difference between the two is really about where they're manufactured and who does the regulation behind them. So in the United States and in ours, and especially in a hospital setting, we recommend the N95 for those. And especially in the hospital setting, if we are around COVID patients, all of the staff are to be wearing these in and out for those areas, especially the high risk areas such as the ER, ICU settings. With the N95s, as just all the other masks, you need to just make sure it fits properly. And with these, we also recommend doing a quick kind of fit test after you put it on. You want to make sure with these as well. Well, it goes over the base of the head, and as I said, the other one will actually go to the back of the neck. You don't want to crisscross it. Okay, it should not be crisscrossed. It should fit nicely so that there's no openings or gaps. You want to press around again that nose bridge to make sure it's nice and tight. And then what you're going to do is you just take a couple like breaths in and out and kind of feel around to see if any air is escaping. If you don't feel any air escaping, then you know you have a nice snug fit and it's safe to go out.
Great. So a lot of people, we're used to it in the hospital. I'm alone in my office, so I don't have to wear a mask when I'm alone. But when I leave the office, I have to put a mask on. Are there benefits or are there side effects or both to having to wear a mask all day long? Because a lot of people in their home environments, they may have elderly relatives living with them. Those people may be immunocompromised, and you have little kids going off to school and being exposed. So the all-day mask wearing, what's the story there?
Sure. Well, the benefit is the prevention of spread of COVID or other respiratory diseases. As Dr. Ramprasad was saying, it's not just COVID-19 and its variants out there with it. We do have flu, we do have RSV, and it will help protect against all of those wearing the mask. So that is the main benefit of wearing it. Side effects really have not been seen that are like detrimental to health. So it does not, you don't retain carbon dioxide by wearing a mask all day. The biggest, what they've seen over the last year is sometimes you might get a little bit of a facial rash, acne, and things along those lines. And definitely there's the mask fatigue as well with it, and just kind of that. So the recommendations for that is to take it off whenever you can. Take it when you're in a space where you are, where it's safe to take it off. Take a mask break. Good skin care as well. Make sure that at the end of the day that you wash your face with a cleanser, right? Lotion and so on for it to try to mitigate any kind of a rash or acne, and hydration as well. Try to make sure you're drinking water if you are wearing a mask all day to help with that whenever you can take your mask break as well.
So there's a lot of press now. Thank you for that, by the way. There's a lot of press now about unvaccinated children wearing a mask at home. And there's a lot of discussion about wearing the mask in schools. And I mean, what is just getting away from all of the sort of the different viewpoints? What is the safest approach for kids in schools and in living situations? Should they have the masks on, and what is the thought about that?
Sure. Well, that too gets a little bit more complicated depending on what's going on at home. Like if if you have children that are living with their grandparents, if you have children that, grandparents, take care of them for a majority of the day while parents are at work. So there's a lot of variability that will go into the recommendations on that, as well as what is the health status of the people involved. The CDC also recommends children under the age of 2 do not have to wear a mask. So it's just 2 and up for that. And then again, if the child is showing symptoms of any type of maybe, the respiratory illnesses or things like that, then to wear a mask or to, don't expose the family members to them as best as possible as well. So, but if it's a shorter visit, then a mask can be recommended. But children ages 5 and up are recommended for vaccines now as well. So they too will benefit from it, just like anybody, just like as Dr. Ramprasad was saying, for adults.
That's great. Is there anything else that I've missed about masks that we should be letting our audience know about?
The other thing I would just say is about removal of the mask, is that make sure when you are removing the mask, remember you have kind of been breathing this out in and out all day long, maybe walking around with it. It's best not to touch it, adjust it as best as possible. If you need to make any adjustments, try to do it on the ear loops for it, or at the top of the bridge of the nose. With the procedural masks, they are once they're dirty or worn for the day, they should be disposed of. And then after you take it off, you should always wash your hands. With your cloth masks, again, if dirty or soiled, get wet, they need to be changed. They should be a different one, and they need to be washed at the end of each day as well. For that, try not to, if you have to take it off, also try to have a place where you can store it if you are going to be putting it back on. Don't put it into a plastic bag. If you are going to be storing it, you do want to use those paper bags, just because plastic will trap moisture and can create other issues along with that. So
okay, that's great.
Yeah, it's definitely hand washing prior to putting it on and after taking it off. Hand washing is the #1 way to help prevent spread of disease.
That's great. We really appreciate that, Maureen. Thank you so much. So before we close the program, we do have a couple of announcements that we wanted to share. Oh, do you want to do the video?
Yes. Yeah, so this will be the knot and tuck video for those procedural masks to try to help for if they are too loose on your face to help adjust.
Great.
There's a simple way to make your disposable mask fit better, which can make it more effective in protecting you against COVID-19. First, fold the mask from edge to edge. Then, make a knot in each ear loop. Push the knot as close to the edge of the mask as possible. Next, fold and tuck the extra material under the edges of the mask. Hold the mask up to your face and gently push the nose wire against your nose so it fits snugly. Place the ear loops around your ears as you normally would to secure the mask. Be sure to remove any gaps in the mask around your nose and cheeks for the best protection. And this is what we call knot and tuck.
Very good. So I think, thank you for that. I think our friends at the CDC also have some information on the different types of masks and respirators, and I think we're going to post a slide that will show, and if anyone wants to get their phones out and they can scan that, it will take you right to that page. For more information on masks and respirators. I'll give you a second to do that. And then they have another page on the CDC resource website on helping the mask actually, improve how much it protects you. So can we go, oh, are we there? We got that second one up? Okay, that's great. And then finally, virtual urgent care. I just want to remind everybody that we do offer virtual urgent care for those who are still concerned about coming into their doctor's appointments. If you need an appointment and are unsure of what your symptoms might be and you'd like to do this, that is the number to dial, 964-4429, and they'll make an appointment for you and you'll get on your phone or on your computer and talk to a clinician who can sort of walk you through what you should do. And then finally, I think we might be at the end of our program. Oh, yes, if you have general questions, you can actually reach me via this email, which is info@riversidehealth.org. Feel free to do that and I can get answers to any questions that maybe we didn't get answered for you today. And if you do want a physician referral, feel free to also call 964-4DOC, which is 964-4362, or send find a doc at riversidehealth.org and we can help connect you to someone who can who can help you with whatever your concerns are. And I just want to thank everyone once again for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Dr. Rampersad, Maureen Clark, you both are wonderful, and we appreciate your expertise and your interest and your passion for all of these things. And thank you for sharing with our audience today. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.